we're going to hear from our local Barbara Hockabout.
And Clark Hockabout.
And Clark as well.
The title of this work, of this talk, is called Shepherding Unquenchable Fire. And that is the line from one of your poems. And it so represents what you are to us in so many ways. You are a legend in your own time, Barbara. And these are some faces of this legend. A nurse, a social worker, an inventor, a woman, a creator, a writer, a great human being. I'm going to show you some of the things, the self-cultivation that Barbara has undertaken in her life, because she is a master of inquiry, and she's curious by nature, and she's very diverse in her interests, and she, of course, is a visionary. One of the reasons the Kerr-Cole Sustainable Center was created was in part because of Jim Scott. And Clark has worked with Jim, and he'd like to say a couple of words about Jim.
Jim has, as a lot of you know Jim. He has moved up to Alaska and is taking a lot of Barbara's ideas with him. I want to read you something that he wrote in an email. If you are part of the Yahoo groups, you may have seen this already. It says, I moved to Alaska in 2008 to set up an agricultural self-reliant community that I have dubbed the Alaska Sustainable Habitat. After several false starts, what has evolved is a plan to set up a limited liability corporation on 80 acres of mostly cleared boreal forest land I bought in July of 2011 near Talkeetna. The aim is to make it a multi-family, multi-generational residential farmstead, incorporating many of the practices I absorbed in living 10 years at the Kerr-Cole Center. Being modeled on the center, it will function as a resource for the Talkeetna area as a site for demonstration, equipment evaluation, invention, experimental agriculture, crop production, seed saving, and education emphasizing renewable, low energy, low net carbon footprint, voluntarily simple, and low capital cost living. So this is Barbara's work that is moving out again into the world, and the influence that Barbara's had on so many of us. We met Barbara at a plant picking up starts from a local CSA. We had heard of Barbara, this woman who knew about solar cooking and sustainability and was a gardener, which was one of our prime interests. And we introduced ourselves and kind of talked to her for a little while. A couple weeks later, we were in Amelia's garden having lunch. Barbara came in, sat at an adjoining table, and we invited her to join us, and we've been friends and fans ever since. And Barbara invited my Barbara, a lot of Barbaras here, to join the board of the Kerr-Cole Sustainable Living Center, where we've worked with Barbara for many years and plan to continue for many more, and are working to sustain Barbara's dream and to maintain her efforts and her vision. I think that kind of life as we know it is evolving, and we need to evolve with it. And education, teaching people how to grow food and how to produce electricity is something that we can all share, something that Barbara has been so critical in experiencing for all of us.
You made it real, Barbara. It worked, and we could see it working. And everywhere we looked in your house, there was another innovation. So it took all these abstract theoretical ideas and nailed it down.
And
we're excited.
In the consideration of community, sustainable community that Barbara has also fostered, we're working with the farmers markets, we're working with local growers, and trying to spread the word, trying to get the food shed in this area, which is basically a food desert, to revitalize, so that we can revitalize some of the old farmland that's laying fallow and become as independent as a community for the whole mountain as we can. Something that again, we have a 2-day food supply in this country. Trucks stop running, 2 days, supermarket's empty. So if we can produce what we need, one of the figures that Barbara came up with in her research for her Master's in Sustainable Communities she's working on at ANU is that Arizona exports 95% of what it produces and imports 95% of what it consumes.
Who's winning that?
What's wrong with this picture? So all the concepts that Barbara has worked on for so long and demonstrated so admirably is something we all need to learn. It's something we all need to incorporate.
So all of this is inspired by Barbara and anticipated by Barbara. And what I'd like to do I'd like to use Barbara's writing as a way to explain how she influenced our philosophy and our lifestyle. So I will be quoting parts of her work. And the books you're welcome to, you saw them on your way in, the 3 books that Barbara has authored. God is a Shifting Concept, which I'll quote a lot from, Home as a Windjammer, and then of course her first book, which was what so many of our prestigious speakers have been talking about. But these 2 books I edited for her, and that was the most wonderful experience I've had, I'll say, in my life. We did it accidentally, didn't we, Barbara? I heard her mention a couple of times, she quoted things, and I said, "Do you write, Barbara?" I've been on the board for quite a few years, and she said, "Oh yeah, I mess around. I write some poetry." And I said, "Well, where is it, Barbara? Where do you keep this?" And so we dug around in the shed in old trunks, very dusty, old, dirty trunks, and pulled out manuscripts. And 60 years worth of poetry here. Our gift to humanity has been shepherding unquenchable fire into food, into water, with love providing relief, rest, confidence for women. That's from Summing It Up, 2005. Perseverance. She's taught us perseverance in a way to find how to make a better world. It does not happen easy. It does not happen overnight. 80 years have rained down on me, but I did not short out, did not dissolve. Integrity. She teaches us integrity in her pursuit to make a better world. From Taking My Stand, 2005. Like a cat cornered by dog pack, I stand on tense claws, teeth gleam, fur explodes on arched back, hissing. That's a part of Barbara we don't see a lot of. But it's there. Living creatively. She teaches us to live creatively. Oh, that's such an understatement. Picture of her house. Many of you have been there. Many of the tours. We've been talking about these. This is that famous wall oven that inspired Amanda. And the water heater and the distiller. Living creatively. Living courageously. She taught us how to live courageously. This is from Home. Home was a windjammer. Meanwhile, I was learning from scratch to be a sailor Born a mountaineer, I really didn't know anything about sailing. Picture of her husband and a friend, 1953 or 4, by the boat of which this book is about, the Windjammer. And this is Barbara and her daughter many years ago on the boat. Living fearlessly. This is a woman who divorced in 1950 when it wasn't a really popular thing to do. This is a woman who pursued careers that were very difficult, and she persevered and was fearless. Bone back and bull roar, barrage of can, slash with a broad axe until your very name is freedom, then drink deep. Living honestly, painfully sometimes honestly. This act haunted me. I could not rest until I'd worried clearly through what in me caused it. With the enemy bared, I could begin to brace against the erosion of my spirit. Living simply. I think one of her favorite poems out of God is a Shifting Concept, of These Are the Kingdom, and it's about she and Diana at the beach. So we fondled feathers and gathered shells and watched the minnows in tidal wells. Living respectfully. Our objective is to live in harmony with life. This knowledge, based on practices from past and present generations, has been built up over the past 30 years, even more now. Living in community. This is from Chairs, one of my favorite poems in this book. When I place chairs, I always set 2. One chair is not enough. A second, full of dust and leaves, awaits the possibility you may come. One of Barbara's walls. No one likes her. Living seamlessly. But then we are all one. So it was also the spirit and the great creative force manifesting. Psychic music, a narrative. She's not just a poet. She's also an essayist. This is from the introduction to God as a Shifting Concept, and it is, as the title implies, a transformation in her perception of Creator. First, God is seen as a shifting concept. Early, he's a fierce old man, censorious and dangerous. Then later, he's dominant, but seeks to work with people for good purposes. Later still, he becomes close up and personal, a cloud of conscious, positive energy with a responsive center. Thank you, Barbara.